Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story Circle. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating young woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, how old you are, and share your story with us today.
Hello, good morning everyone. My full name is Jennifer Ong and I am based in Melbourne, Australia. I am 19 years old and currently studying a Bachelor of Fashion Design at RMIT. I'd want to tell you all a story about how I got into fashion design. I just finished my second year in the degree and I'm about to finish my third and final year. So I was born in Melbourne, Australia, and I grew up here as well. And from a young age, I was always drawing dresses and shoes and bags in in my maths books as a kid, and I'd get in trouble for it. And that was around when I was 7 years old, and it continued up until I graduated primary school. And I think that's the first indication of me being interested in fashion design. I'd also draw a lot of dress designs at home, and at the time, I think I liked designing dresses more than I cared to admit. Um, I had quite a normal childhood growing up in Melbourne, Australia. Sadly, I lost my biological father at the age of 9 after a battle with lung cancer. And my mother remarried when I started high school. And my stepfather and my mother have been very, very supportive of me studying fashion design. I did encounter some challenges with communicating to my parents about wanting to study fashion design, but I think having a Western stepfather made things a bit easier. He believes that people should pick what they study based on their passions and interests, but he also recognizes the need to have a stable career. So, based on all of based on all of the conversations I had with my parents, I decided that studying fashion design was the right choice for me, and I picked the degree at RMIT because it provides a good mix of conceptual design courses, but I've but those skills have been but learning those skills whenever I learn skills, I think about how I could apply it in a business context, and I think about how commercial my designs are or what I do to make them more commercial. So I think working in the fashion industry is a great way to explore my creative side, gain but also gain a stable career. So I'm really, really happy with my experience in the degree so far. I've finished 2 years of it, and it covers so much in the 3 years. So you learn about how to sew garments, you learn about design context, you learn about fabrication and materiality, you learn how to research fashion itself, you learn about fashion history. I think there's a bit of fashion history and fashion philosophy in one of the courses. You also learn about sustainability. I think that's a very important topic in the fashion industry because fashion is one of the most wasteful industries in the world, and it's up to the current industry and future fashion industry people to try and make the fashion system more sustainable. And that's really hard because a lot of production of clothing is driven by consumerism and continually making new things to attract more customers. So it's really hard to close the loop and make the fashion business model more circular. So, having talked about what I've currently studied, I'll go into detail about my experience as a minority growing up in Melbourne. I'm very lucky to have lived in Melbourne all these years because Melbourne is a very diverse city. Um, there are all kinds of minority people here, and I've never had very negative experiences of racism growing up, um, except for times in primary school where I'd bring cultural foods and maybe my classmates were a bit put off by it, but nothing overly negative. During COVID, I was expecting really serious racist incidents in places like public transport, but I don't think it happened a lot in Melbourne. I heard about incidents happening overseas in America and Europe. Um, some people were really, some people became really hateful towards Chinese people and Asian people in general because of COVID, and it did strike a bit of fear into my heart because I have to use public transport when I'm getting around. But actually, it's been really positive. I feel that Melbourne really embraces different people. It's like a mini, I've heard people say it's like a mini version of the world. You can try all sorts of different cuisine, you can talk to different people, you can participate in public events and meet new people. I think it's one of the most livable cities because there are very, very low amounts of racism and prejudice in such a multicultural city. And I'm really, really happy that I've lived here and I feel safe when I'm out in the streets and I don't have to worry about this all the time. So yeah, that has been my experience growing up in Melbourne. I haven't I haven't really experienced I haven't really experienced any fear or anything. So in that aspect, Melbourne is a beautiful city. So so okay, I explained my experience as a minority in Melbourne, and I'll just go through the rest of my childhood from when I graduated primary school up to enrolling in university. I had a great time in high school. I studied subjects that interested me, like English literature, maths, business management, psychology, and Chinese as a second language. And I actually think those most of those subjects ended up being relevant to my university degree. So my approach to learning is quite my approach to learning is quite open. I choose things that interest me and I really, really do my best to get the most out of assessments. I'm like it's all or nothing. I'm a really driven person and I try my hardest in everything I do. And I think that approach has been really helpful because I have been able to create opportunities for myself and I think maximizing what you get out of things is a good approach to life because you never know what could happen from applying yourself to everything. You could get more opportunities. You could get you could get an opportunity that leads you somewhere and that's really unexpected. So I'm always keen to volunteer with with end of year graduate fashion shows, and I've volunteered for Melbourne Fashion Festival. I've volunteered for David Jones. It's been great to get out in the industry and network with people, especially those from the fashion industry, media and communications. Like, it's amazing how many people you can meet when you actually put yourself out there, and you put yourself out there, you be brave, and you just talk to as many people as possible. You introduce yourself, and yeah, I think that's how I do things. So I feel that being I I'm naturally shy if I get to be shy, but I think it's really important to put yourself out there. So yeah, I think I've explained my entire life up until this point, how I got into the fashion industry, and my experiences growing up. So I think that's pretty much
You.
it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So let's talk about your career up until this point. Reflecting on your time studying your Bachelor of Fashion Design degree, what
Mhm.
are some of the key lessons or experiences that have shaped your career so far?
So I don't actually work in the fashion industry at the moment because I'm still studying. However, I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned from doing this degree is that you can't you can't um you can't think about what you're going to do for a project. You just have to do it, and then it evolves over time, and then it takes shape. So essentially, continuous progress in what you do is better than delayed perfectionism, because you learn by doing. You can't just formulate an idea in your head and expect it to work and do it at the last minute. It doesn't work that way. I think that can be applied to any industry or any career.
That is so true. So you've done quite a bit of volunteer work with the
Mm-hmm.
PayPal Melbourne Fashion Festival. I noticed you've also volunteered for David Jones. What were your primary responsibilities in those roles?
So when I apply for volunteer roles, I don't apply with the expectation that I'll get exactly what I want, that I'll get the most sought after roles. So I've done a number of things. I At the PayPal Melbourne Fashion Festival, I was mainly a front of house attendant. So what I was responsible for um opening boxes of a box cutter, taking out and sorting all those freebies that the guests get at the Melbourne Fashion Festival, along with a team of other volunteers as well. And then this year we loaded up the carts, took it out the front of the building, and we were just greeting guests and giving out free samples and everything. But the amount of people you meet doing volunteer jobs is amazing. Like I even met um I've met quite a few founders of fashion design brands, got talking with them. I asked them, do you offer internships? I might contact you when I have time. And they said, yeah, yeah, we do. So even if you do the most simple roles, you can meet great people and network. So that's what I did at the Melbourne Fashion Festival. And then I was one of the back of house dressers. I didn't get that role in the first place, but they needed one at the last minute. So I dressed one of the models for a show rehearsal, and I was amazed at how much work that needs to get done in a short amount of time, and how you have to get the styles correct. So it's very stressful. And at the David Jones show, I did front of house show preparation. I packed about 600 gift bags with a team of other volunteers. So we were responsible for unpacking, sorting, goods and then putting them in gift bags. And there was a lot of heavy lifting of boxes and pushing trolleys. So some of the behind the scenes work. And I was a front of house volunteer, and I just ushered people to their seats. So I've done a whole range of volunteer roles that give me an understanding of not just fashion and styling, but event management too. And I think that's a very important set of skills to have when you go out into the fashion industry. There's so many there's so many odd jobs and little things, and you have to recruit people to help you because there's a lot of moving parts to a fashion show.
I love that. So, in your view, how has the focus on sustainability impacted fashion trends? And how do you incorporate sustainable practices in your work as you're becoming a fashion designer?
That's actually quite a difficult question, but I'll try my best. So we all know the current fashion business model is linear. So you take resources, you make stuff, and then it ends up as waste later on down the line.
Yes.
And you can extend that line. You can try and extend that line, donate your clothing to op shops, hope someone else buys it and gives it a new life. But that just delays the inevitable, and it will end up in waste at some time
Yeah.
at the end of its life. And that's really, it's happening a lot. And even when you thrift, there's a large percentage of clothes that just don't get sold and end up in a landfill. And it's fashion's very dependent on the take, make, waste linear model at the moment. But there are some brands out there who have adopted the circular method of production. Like one of my favorite brands doing this circular production model is ABCH World. They are a local brand
Hmm.
in Melbourne, and I did intern for them too. I think the fashion industry really needs to take a step back and realize that they still use synthetic materials made from fossil fuels, and blending these synthetic materials with natural fibers doesn't make them a sustainable brand. Like those blended fibers are extremely difficult to recycle, and fast fashion brands need to realize that producing millions of garments cheaply, all in the name of profit, isn't good for the planet. Because my experience with fast fashion hasn't been great. Like I remember buying a few garments from H&M or some other store similar to H&M, and I never wore it more than a few times, and I'm pretty sure I've
Yes.
already donated it. It's and I do feel guilty because at that time I didn't realize that fast fashion had a massive impact on the planet, but I do now, and I try my best to avoid it and just buy from small businesses instead. So
Yeah.
I think I think people should buy from small fashion businesses and more sustainable brands. But then there's this challenge of some sustainable brands being more expensive, and that's because people are being paid fairly. The materials are high quality. Like the fast fashion consumption has instilled the belief in consumers that fashion should be cheap. It should be fast. Oh, this dress probably took 5 minutes to make. I'm sure it's not that hard, and that's how most of the public thinks about fashion. So when I'm
Yeah.
making things, I actually um, I'm actually very attentive to every single detail, and everything takes a lot longer than you think.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's so true.
as for what I'm doing to be sustainable, currently I really could do better. But when I'm learning, I want to practice sewing as many materials as possible. So I've worked with synthetics, I've worked with silk, wool, just any type of fabric that I haven't used to just learn
Yes.
how the fabric property affects sewing. I think I've used neoprene, but we all know that it's not good for the environment. It's used in wetsuits, but it releases all sorts of nasty microplastics into the ocean when you go surfing or
Mhm.
something. But as a student, it's quite hard to be sustainable because you're often on a limited budget and you have to end up
Yes.
buying some synthetics for your final year
Yes.
collection. But it's important to note that students collectively contribute very little waste. It's the huge companies like
Yeah.
Kmart making 7 million dresses that don't end up being sold. It's actually those companies, fast fashion companies, creating almost all of the waste in the fashion industry. So I think as a student, I shouldn't feel guilty for wasting materials. You have to waste a little bit to learn. And there's materials you have to buy like zips, buttons that are mostly plastic, and you have to use them as part of your coursework. So I really could do better, and I'd love to buy natural fibers all the time, but you can get expensive. So sometimes I have to compromise.
It's not
So
always
yeah,
possible.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's not always possible either.
So let's talk a little bit about the influence of digital media. How do you think digital media and platforms like social media have changed the landscape of fashion design and marketing?
That's a great question. I think the social media has played a huge role in how consumers interact with fashion through marketing as well. So big fast fashion companies like Shein or Cider um, like to reach out to influencers to wear some of their latest designs. And of course,
Yes.
influencers have huge audiences. Most of these audiences are made up of young people, like teenagers, or really trend focused people who just want to follow the latest trend all the time in the hopes that they will become popular. Like for me, I'm probably in that demographic, but it doesn't really mean anything to me because I like to wear what I want to wear, and I don't really follow trends because I find most of them superficial. But for those people who do interactive influencers, when an influencer posts on Instagram wearing an outfit, they say, "Oh, it's from Shein. Enter my promo code. You'll get 40% off." It creates this fear of missing out among customers, and then a lot of those,
Yes.
sorry, among audience members, and then a lot of those audience members do impulse purchases because they don't want to miss out, but then they never actually wear the garment more than once. Like, have you noticed that on TikTok, the influencers buy a garment, they say things like, "Oh, I'm so obsessed with this. This is going to be a forever piece," and then you never see them wear it again. It's just in one video,
Yeah.
and
It's all
I feel
just
like they're just
marketing.
doing that. It's all just marketing and brand deals. Like I've never seen an influencer wear the same outfit twice, and I
Yeah.
think that's a really toxic mindset because clothing should be made to be worn forever. Like I have 5 dresses from the Pretty Dress Company that I rotate. So the Pretty Dress Company is a British dress company, and they are known for very chic designs, um, really nice dresses that you can wear to work or evening events. Like I'm obsessed with that brand
Um,
for different reasons. It's well
mm,
made, it's quality. Like they do use synthetic fibers, but you wear a dress once from them and you're obsessed with it because it's comfortable, it fits well, like it's well made for the price that you pay
that
for
you've
it.
paid.
Like
Yeah.
the people are being paid fairly, and I think that's what people should look for in clothes.
Yeah.
Because when I walk into fast fashion shops and I look at the latest clothing, like there's really scratchy sequin tops, saggy pants. Like I saw a dress in a high street boutique and its stitching was already coming undone and it was retailing for nearly $300.
It's
So I'm
crazy.
the influencers have really influenced people negatively, and they,
Mm,
instead of encouraging people to look for the things I mentioned in garments before you buy them, they are just saying you should buy this because I bought this and I think
yeah.
it looks good, but it doesn't look good. They're just saying it because they were paid to say it. So I
Yeah,
think
that's a
that's
real
the impact.
pity.
Yeah.
That is a
Mm,
real pity. So let me finish our interview with this last
mm.
question. As you are going through your studies and thinking about your own career, what area of fashion do you see yourself specializing in? And what kind of a future do you want to create with your designs?
Uh, so with my designs, I hope to be using natural fibers and sustainable production and quality production. So I would love to contribute to a future where consumers are careful about what they buy. They buy less clothing, but that clothing is of more quality. So they contribute to a system where people are getting paid fairly for producing garments, and they are also assured that the garments that they buy are of quality and can be worn forever. So I feel like garments should be made to last a lifetime.
Yeah.
So since the Industrial Revolution, mass production has become normal in our lives, and the same has happened for clothing. But I really wouldn't want to have my designs be produced in unsanitary and unsafe factories in third world countries where people are being exploited. But that's
Yeah.
not to say you can't. That's not to say you can't have garments produced in third world countries. There are ethical factories in third world countries. You just have to be
Yes.
careful about who you commission your garments to for
Yeah.
production. You have to check the facilities. You have to make sure they're actually certified. That's a whole other thing. But I want a future where people are careful about what they buy, that where people enjoy their purchases and actually wear those purchases every so often, and where people have smaller wardrobes of quality things. And I want to see
Yes.
less throwing things out into plastic bags, and I want to see less uh, impulse buying in consumers. And I think social media has the power to change the mindset of fashion consumers. I think that
Yeah.
there are influencers out there who recommend sustainable brands, and I really like
Mm.
what they're doing because they're part of the minority of influencers who are actually good. And I hope that influencers actually start to think about what they're promoting, and instead of taking cold hard cash from Shein, they would say, actually, I don't think this is a good idea. Maybe I should think about promoting small businesses and wearing some of their designs. So they have the
Yeah.
power to change things, but whether they're willing to depends on their morals or ethics. And I think a lot of them have been misguided by fast fashion brands. Like fast fashion brands lie about how sustainable they are. So there's that too.
Yeah.
I don't think influencers are bad or morally decrepit. I think they have the power to rethink about what they're promoting and become good influencers. But it's going to take a long time before people adopt these mindsets and these ideas about the fashion industry, because what has become
Yeah.
so normalized is fast production, fast money, and no care about quality. And
That's a
yeah,
real
yeah,
pity. Wow.
mm,
Well,
it
thank
is.
you so much for coming online today and sharing your story with us. It's inspiring to see a young woman who's out there in the fashion world dreaming to create a better future for us. So thank
Mm,
you for coming online. And thank you to
thank you.
everybody who's tuned in today. Her Story Circle is attracting stories from people both young and old. So today's lady was really an inspiration. Tune in again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And Jennifer, thanks again.
Thank you, Gertrude. Thank you so much for inviting me. This was a lot of fun, and have a nice day.
Bye for now, everybody. Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making her story.